Good morning. I'm Pastor Larry, and I'm here with Pastor Stacy.
Good morning. We're glad that you guys are joining us today.
Happy Thursday. And I don't know about you, but as I get into the, this new year, I love the stories.
Yes.
They're so, I don't know, just they're stories we hear a lot,
Yeah.
but they're just poignant.
Well, and they are fun to read, even though the content is somewhat disturbing at times, but they do read like good stories.
And I have to admit that there are times a little later in the year that I get a little bit bored with what I'm reading, but right now it's just so great.
Yeah.
And we're actually this week we're reading in Genesis. Today is 42, 43, chapter 42 and 43. And it's this idea of Joseph, who now, he's gone through a lot. He's had a hard time.
A lot.
And his brothers, sold him out. Mm-hmm. Then he's accused of raping the
Pharaoh's wife.
Yeah. And it's a terrible story. Yeah. But now he's come into his own. He's now risen to this leadership level that we can't even imagine, and he's making a huge impact in Egypt. And his brothers now come to him,
not knowing that it's their brother.
They don't recognize him, but he recognizes them.
Right.
And what do you think he's doing here? It kind of seems to me like he's messing with his brothers a little bit.
Well, definitely. Just that sibling kind of like the power that he had, knowing who they were and them not knowing that was their brother. And at one point because he says, well, go back and bring your youngest brother and you got to leave one of the other ones here. And they feel like they're being punished for what they did before. And it made me think like, oh my gosh, God is so faithful in spite of who we are. He does not give us punishments for our wrongdoings, so yeah.
So there's this famine. The brothers are, they're starving, the family's starving. They come into Egypt to beg for food. So they get these bags of wheat.
Yeah.
And then Joseph puts their money back in their bags that they don't find until later on that night.
Right.
And then they're afraid that they've been set up, like they're going to get arrested or something. So they go to their dad. They plead with their dad. Dad, let us take the youngest brother back with us. And dad says, no.
Oh, he's furious.
I've already lost my son Joseph. I've lost another son now who's still in Egypt. Mm-hmm. And now you want to take my youngest? And he's like, no.
Youngest and one of his favorites.
Exactly. So it's just this crazy story. But as I read this, as I have spent some time in this, you see that he's gone through these difficulties, and now he's doing well. Do you think the difficulties prepared him for the position that he has currently?
Absolutely. And I actually saw a little bit of a correlation in our New Testament reading for today, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. But, you and I have both gone through some tough times in our life, as most everybody has, but we've gone through some similar tough times with divorce. And as I was telling you before, some of those times I look back, not fondly, but I so cherish that time that I had with God because I was so dependent on him. So I do believe that prepared me for some other hardships in my life, that I was stronger in my faith. And I think that this has prepared Joseph.
So I was in ministry for many years, and I went through divorce.
Yeah.
And it was the darkest, most horrible time of my life. And when I was going through that difficulty, I never could imagine that it was going to turn out well, that it was going to turn into something positive.
Yeah.
And I have to believe that Joseph, when he was going through the difficulties of being in prison and, accused of something that he didn't do, that he couldn't imagine that God was going to turn this around and make it something positive.
Well, and even earlier in the reading, when he was imprisoned and he was translating dreams for, I think, the baker and the cupbearer.
Right.
And then it was quite a time later because then the baker, one of them was like, oh, I'm gonna let the Pharaoh know about you.
And he forgot about it.
And I think, oh, he still had to wait to be redeemed for quite some time.
So then the story, continues on where the brothers do finally come
Mhm.
back. The dad gives them permission. They come back, and it really come back because they're starving again.
Yeah.
They need some resources. So they come back to get more wheat, and they bring the younger brother. And Joseph sees the younger brother, and you notice that he's always asking his brothers, is our dad still
Yeah.
around? Is he still hanging in there? And then it's this idea that he gets emotional. He invites them into the palace
Mhm.
for a meal. He gets so emotional, he doesn't want them to see him emotion. So he goes in his room and kind of weeps, I guess,
Mhm.
and then comes back eventually when it composes himself, and they have a meal. Did you notice that the brothers couldn't sit at the table with the Egyptians?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah, it says that the Egyptians wouldn't sit with a
Huh.
Hebrew person, so they ended up having to sit at a separate table. I
Kind of
thought
like
that
maybe
was
like the kid table at
exactly,
Thanksgiving.
yeah.
Interesting. It had stood out to me, and I thought, wow, what a feast that must have been. What a reunion that must have been. And I thought about how during these current times, we hear of these 23andMe reunions where people meet family members that they didn't know that they had. And many of them are so joyful. Some are probably a little awkward and weird. But I do think, wow, what an amazing
Well,
reunion.
even my wife did 23andMe,
Yeah.
and she found out she has a sister she
Yeah.
didn't know about,
And
which
they've
is
met in person,
they
right?
have, yeah, several times. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Also, this today we read in the New Testament,
Mhm.
we read Matthew 13 and 14, and Jesus goes back to Nazareth to minister in Nazareth,
His hometown.
right? And he's not received well,
Right.
which is kind of an interesting thing. Has anything like that ever happened to you?
No, but that definitely, well, I shouldn't say no, because that did stand out to me that sometimes, we always say as pastors and as Christians, we want to represent Jesus in the best way that we can. But sometimes the hardest people to represent our faith to seems to be those that we're closest to,
That's true.
whether it's our family or close friends. That some of those conversations are harder to have with those ones than they are people that I've just met
That's right.
or strangers. And so that's what stood out to me, thinking, because it even says that he only did a few miracles there because of their
Right.
unbelief.
Yeah, I've been to Nazareth. In fact, the last time we were there, I think I stayed 3 days in Nazareth, and it's a scary place.
Really?
It's about 70% Muslim now, 30% Christian, and there's tension. There is
Wow.
this tension that goes on. There's like billboards that the Muslims have put up that warn Christians to convert to uh, to follow Muhammad, and it's just an interesting place. But this story kind of reminded me of something that happened to me. So many years ago, I'm traveling with a Christian band. We're playing all over the country, and we get invited to come and play at a fair in my hometown. And so we go back there, but my mom calls me, and it was just hilarious to me because I have 2 kids,
Right.
and grown up, but I had long hair,
Right.
and I had my ears pierced. And my mom said, "Would you please take your earrings out when you
Oh,
come and
wow.
play in your hometown, because we don't want people to look at you weird." And it just really strikes me that
Wow.
that
Did
my
you?
mom
Did
did.
you take out your earrings?
I did take out my earrings. But then that Christmas, my mom felt really bad about it, and she gave me diamond earrings.
Well, then, yeah, the reward was good.
Exactly.
Nice.
Now, the
Wow.
proverb that we read today is Proverbs 4, 7, and 9. And I love the first part of it. It says, wisdom, getting wisdom is the wisest thing you can do.
Yeah.
And I love that, because I remember many years ago when I read about Solomon, and Solomon, God basically says to Solomon, ask for whatever you want. And Solomon says, I want wisdom. And because he chose wisdom,
Yeah.
God blessed him with everything.
Yes.
And that's always stuck out to me. So that has been a prayer of mine. God, give me wisdom.
Right.
Give me wisdom.
Right. Yes, because he didn't ask for these tangible provisions, but yet he was given that because of what he asked for.
Right.
I had written down that same verse, and then I wrote, some wisdom comes from making mistakes.
Yep.
And thankfully, we also can learn from those that are older and wiser and have already made the mistakes in front of us. And I think of my kids, and I don't want them to make the same mistakes that I
Right.
did. I want them to do better than I did. But yet, sometimes, that's the hard part as a parent, they have to skin their knees to be able to learn some of those hardships and move forward and become wiser because of it. But
That's
it's
right.
hard to watch.
It is hard to watch, but it's a good thing to want wisdom
Yes.
and to even pray and ask God for wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you're enjoying the reading this year, and we just thank you for joining us today. Have a great day.